Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well this morning. Thank you so much for joining me on my Facebook Live for this week. As always, please feel free to ask questions in the comments and I will answer throughout the live. And if you're listening to the recording, I will check back regularly and answer your questions. For those of you on the call, say hello, let me know where you're from, and tell me what breed you own and why you picked that breed. What's your favorite thing about that breed? Is it the way they look? Is it the way they act? Is it their energy levels? Always curious to know everything about you guys. While we give people a couple of minutes to join us, I was going to talk about something that came up a couple of times during this week. I see this with some of my clients and they'll be walking their dog, and in 10 feet, let's say going from their crate to a piece of agility equipment, they give like 5 commands: leave it, come, heel, the dog's name, no sniffing. Yet I don't see the dog making any choices. This is like that saying, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Well, this is like, if you give a cue and your dog doesn't do anything, is it really a cue? There are a couple things here I want to talk about. I'm sure they'll come up in future Facebook Lives, and I've covered some of it in previous Facebook Lives. First, is your understanding of what your dog knows and doesn't know. If you give a cue and your dog doesn't perform the action, it's time to figure out what's going on. The other part of this is, are you clear what your expectations are to your dog? Does your dog understand criteria? And, and what I mean by criteria is, for example, if I say heel, I expect my dog to stay in position next to me until I tell him he doesn't have to. I shouldn't have to say leave it if there's something on the ground, because the heel supersedes going for the stuff on the ground. Does that make sense? If you need to micromanage, then maybe you need to figure out what you want and what you don't want, or what you have, what you want and what you have. For example, I'm walking the dog with my dog. If I regularly have to say leave it as my dog lunges at garbage on the street, then this is information I need to work on while walking. This is where your games of choice come in this is where your games of choice are important. This is what you have to work on so that your dog understands that garbage on the street is not available. I don't want to constantly be having to nag my dog, because those aren't really cues. They're nagging. If you're saying leave it every 3 steps, that's not a cue. That's now nagging. I used to have a neighbor who you could hear them coming down the street. I have a phone call. He would be walking his dog going heel, 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 heel. And you would hear him coming on a quiet night all the way down the street and all the way back. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun for the dog or my neighbor. So stuff I want you to think about. Do you micromanage your dog? Are you constantly giving cues? Is your dog listening, or has he learned to tune you out? So that's the problem with constantly giving cues. Your dog very quickly starts to go, yeah, I just don't hear you. It's like there's wind in my ears. I can't hear you. Okay, back to the topic for today. Helping your stressed out dog. Um, Last week, I asked you to pay attention if your dog was stressed in situations you hadn't noticed before. And we talked about different signs of stress that you may not have noticed because, like I said, sniffing can be a stress reaction. Sniffing can be just a dog. Sniffing can be a stress reaction. Sniffing can be a dog just sniffing. So it's not always very obvious when dogs are stressed, and we miss a lot of the subtle signs they give. So comment on that. Let me know what you discovered. Okay, we have a comment from Debbie. Debbie says, since you put it like that, I am a nagger. You know what, Debbie? I think we all are at some point. We're we have no choice. But it's my goal. Whenever I see myself nagging, I start to go. I had one dog who was constantly in the kitchen. Now I train all my dogs to sit on a bed outside the kitchen, so I don't constantly have to tell them to get out of the kitchen. But when I catch myself nagging, I try to fix it. It was really interesting when my son was young. So let's say 3, 4 years old, because little kids mimic you. And he was constantly telling the dog to get out of the kitchen. I was like, oh, that's how I sound. I don't like that. So, yeah, try to think of it that way. If you're nagging, what do you want to do to change it? What is it you're nagging about? Okay, so our dogs are our babies. I don't mean they're human or that whole anthropomorphism thing. I do mean dogs are part of our family. We care for them. We want the best for them. We are responsible for them. And that is why we want them to be happy and content. When a dog is stressed, he looks uncomfortable. That makes a lot of owners panic and want to solve the dilemma for the dog. You see this a lot in dogs who do dog sports. Owners are asking for higher challenges and sometimes overwhelm the dog. And when faced with too much pressure, the dog disengages. The owner will do anything to prevent this happening, so will help the dog solve the problem. The problem is if you always solve the problem for the dog doesn't learn how to work through the challenge and find a solution, which is what you need in dog training. When I ask my dog to do something, if he's not sure, I want him to try and not say too much pressure and walk away. And then you get dogs who leave because of that. I currently have, as some of you know, a 7-month-old puppy who's in a full out keep away stage. If I ask her a question and she's not unsure of the answer, she leaves me. And then, of course, as soon as they disengage from you, even look away, it's easy to find something else to do in a class with other people and other dogs. So, this is our challenge. My challenge to me is to manage my dog better. Remember, the first step of changing a behavior is stop it from happening. So, she's going to wear a long line when I'm working on stuff that's off leash. Um, but my other job is not just to manage her, because that won't solve the actual problem. It's to be more aware of what information she needs from me so that she doesn't disengage and therefore doesn't take off and then not come when called. That's a whole other issue we'll deal with eventually. So the ideal scenario is constantly setting your dog up for challenges that are solvable. Every time a challenge is solved, your dog will be more likely to work through the next challenge and actually learn to work harder and learn to work through failure. This is where shaping is amazing, because shaping is all about failing and figuring out. I am always looking for challenges for my dog to solve. For example, I have a dog who's not pushy, meaning if there's a door partway open, he'll stand there quietly and wait for you to open the door instead of pushing through. And you're like, who cares? It's not a big deal. And it's really not. But when he works at a scent trial and I want him to find odor, sometimes he has to push something to get to the odor. So this is an exercise our scent instructor gave us, which I thought was amazing and perfect for him. My other border collie has no problem. He pushes right through. He's confident. He doesn't have that sensitivity. But this border collie, Iggy, he was like, oh, I can't push that to get to there. And that's what I wanted to build, that confidence that he can. So we set up a hide where they had to push stuff out of their way to find the odor. At first, it was easy. It was narrow, but he could get to it without pushing. So that built value for finding that odor. And we didn't move the odor. We didn't move what he had to find. We just kept making getting to it more challenging. So at first it was easy and narrow. And then every turn we increased the challenge by shrinking the opening. And it was an X pen, so he could easily move it with just a little bit of pressure. Because we built value for finding the original hide, that helped him overcome his sensitivity and push. And he did look stressed during it. So scenarios like this are perfect ways to build confidence. It's constantly increasing the challenge, but making it so they can be successful. In everyday life, this could be for him stuff like getting on your boat, walking over a graded bridge, or walking by something noisy. So that confidence that I'm building will serve me not just at a scent trial, but in everyday life. I always remember during the ice storm, if some of you know, we in Ottawa had an ice storm in 1998 and we were without power for 21 days. So we had a generator for most of that. And the way it was set up in the garage, we had to walk by it to get in the house because it was way too icy to go through any of the other doorways. Um, my Akita at the time was the first time all panicky about walking through by the generator, but it wasn't optional. We needed to get him in the house. So I worked on it. I took him by the collar. I guided him through, didn't drag him, but took away his option to leave and rewarded him for making the choice to keep walking. Um, and he was a pretty confident dog who'd been exposed to a lot, so he overcame it really quickly. If instead I had a dog who I'd babied or helped all the time, he might have freaked out. And that, like I said, this would have been a huge problem. He was 90 pounds, and this was the only way in and out of the house. So, something you can do, a game I play with Ig, so to build his confidence on pushing through stuff and overcoming his sensitivities, is I taught him to open his crate door. So Iggy gets fed every day in his crate. So there's lots of value for going in. You start to get dinner ready, he goes into his crate. I started with the door half closed. So he'd have to kind of squish just a tiny bit to get in. And then he'd get rewarded with his dinner. Every day or every couple of days, I moved the door closed, half inch, an inch, giving him a slightly higher challenge than the day before. And he kept pushing it open. There was days where he was like, "Oh, I'm not sure. This seems really hard." And I was like, "But I have your dinner. And if you want your dinner, you have to overcome it." And you just, in situations like that, you don't want to, "Oh, come on, you can do it." You don't want to cheerlead because that can put pressure on them. You don't want to hover. We tend to want to help. So we lean over. You just sit back and go, "If you want your dinner, that's what you got to do." And again, the challenges are very small, so he can overcome them. Um, and that's how now I can leave the door open that much, just enough that he can put his nose in and he can fling the door open and walk in. Every time he makes a choice, he has a dopamine release that not only dinner was reinforcing, but the dopamine release. Have you ever worked on a difficult problem and then had a solution? Um, that's the same thing for a dog. They enjoy working, they enjoy thinking. So giving your dogs challenges to overcome is not only mental work, which dogs really enjoy, but really rewarding. Dogs love to learn and be challenged. And again, this is creating that don't quit, keep trying, don't walk away. All things dogs need in general life. If instead I rushed to open the door every time he approached this problem, it would have been no stress and no effort for Iggy. So, yes, at the time he would look comfortable and happier, but it would have been up to me to eliminate the stress instead of him working through the stress. I want to say you can't really eliminate your dog's stress. You just got to teach them how to deal with it, overcome it, or get through it. There is nothing you can do to tell them it's okay. If you take a stressed dog and start petting them and, "Oh, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay," I truly believe you're reinforcing the stress and actually making him worse. Because if you're like all panicked, going, "Oh my gosh, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's fine," then he's like, "Oh, there really was a problem." Where if you're like, "You're fine, get over it," make it a non issue, make it funny. "Oh, you're scared of the fire hydrant. Okay." And then go talk to the fire hydrant. And fire hydrants for me can scare my dogs because I live in the country and they never see them. Um, the more of a non-issue you make it, the more of a non-issue it is for your dog. There are times when removing your dog from the situation is the best solution. I totally believe that. And even if this isn't a failure, you assess and learn from what happened, then you can come back and try again. So it is a failure, but it's a learning moment too. I have a lovely dog here for board and train. After I spent a few days building a relationship with her, I was ready to push her a little and see what we got. I put her on leash and took her into the garage. So far, she had only been in the backyard, mostly off leash. When working with any fearful or reactive dog, I always stand still and play my ODR game. Observe, don't react. This serves a couple of purposes. Allows the dog to acclimatize to the environment. When you're walking, the environment constantly changes with a worried dog. They never get time to get used to it. So they stay at a high level of stress all the time because there's new stuff being introduced. When you stand still, if the environment doesn't change, eventually they start to calm down because the body doesn't want to stay in that high stress level. And there's nothing new to keep them there. So they eventually go, okay, I'm standing here. I'm not dead. Nothing's happened. It's all good. And they start to relax. And that's what you're looking for, them to come out of that stress state and start to become a thinking, operant dog. Um, you see this with puppies when you take them to a new place. You put them down and they kind of freeze for a few minutes, and they don't even look around. They just stand still. And then all of a sudden they start to sniff and look around, and that's them working through that stress. They freeze, one of the five stress reactions: fight, flight, freeze, fool around, and fight. So they freeze for a minute, and some dogs, I think it's like 3 seconds, you don't even notice it. But with some dogs, some puppies, it's like 30 seconds to a minute. And then all of a sudden, you see them start to come out of their shell. And they're like, oh, okay. Now, if you take a puppy like that and go walking, he might stay frozen the whole time and never come out of that stress reaction. Um, this is with puppies, with adult dogs that are worried, you want to constantly keep exposing them and letting them work through the stress and come out the other side. So that teaches them how to do that and builds their confidence. Um, as the dog relaxes and starts to orient to you, this also gives you the information that the brain has arrived. If you try, I hear this all the time. Oh, my dog reacts when he sees another dog. I can't give him food. I can't distract him. By the time your dog has reacted, he is what's called over threshold. They can't engage the brain. They're in full reacting mode. You need to try to affect change before reaction. That could mean at distance. So yes, your dog reacts when the dog's 10 feet away. What about when the dog's 100 feet away? What about when the dog's 200 feet away? I have worked this with hundreds of dogs. People are like, nope, my dog reacts the second she sees a dog, but they don't. There's always a distance that they don't react at. Now you have your foot in the door. You can go, hey, look at that. Pair that looking at the dog with rewards, and your dog starts to become, right away when your dog starts to become operant because they'll take the reward, and then you can work with that. If your dog can't disconnect from the environment and connect to me or you, and at least start to investigate the environment by looking around and possibly sniffing after about 5-10 minutes, which is the case with my board and train, then the challenge is too hard. So that could mean at distance, like I was saying before with the dog, or try something different. With her, I started to investigate what was causing the problem. I worked her on leash in the backyard to make sure she was still operant, and she was. I went out another door and worked her, and she was still not as good, but better. She's scared of the car. And I think going through the garage, she had to deal with a car that's standing there. And I think the sight of the car was what put her into, I can't deal with this state. Setting your dog up to be stressed and never being able to relieve that stress will start to create triggers. So for her, for example, it would mean if I keep taking her to the garage and practicing this exact behavior, she will eventually start to react as soon as I open the door from the backyard to the garage. Oh, that door predicts bad things. So you've got to watch your triggers because that will make your stress reactions even worse and earlier. So here's a common example you might be able to relate to. Does your dog walk into the vet, tail wagging, happy to see everybody? Or does your dog go into full state of panic as soon as you pull into the parking lot? So ears pinned, tail tucked, so worried. No dog starts out hating the vet, but now your dog has started to hate the vet. So what happened? you might be able to figure it out. Some dogs, people say, oh, my dog was great till he got neutered or spayed, or he had an injury. But sometimes it's just age, and all of a sudden they get weird at 7 months and they start going, oh, new things, people pushing me, people grabbing me. I don't like it. Regardless, you are now acquiring triggers. So that means now the dog panics when you get out of the car. Now the dog panics when you pull into the parking lot. Now the dog panics when you drive down the street the vet's on. So there's nothing you can do to relieve that stress once you're there, because he's already engaged in that stress as soon as that trigger kicks in. For example, you get out of the car at the vet clinic and your dog goes into full panic. It's too late. They're already into that reaction, not engaging type of brain. But you can start working on those triggers and backing them up. For example, you pull into the street at the vet and or you pull into the parking lot. Let's say the parking lot's what sets them off. And that could be you drive down that street every day for a million other things. So that doesn't trigger the vet. But as soon as you pull into the parking lot, your dog's like, oh, yeah, no, I can't do this. So you pull into the parking lot and hand your dog a high-end chewy or a frozen Kong and say, oh, we're going to every day pull into the parking lot and I'm going to throw you a Kong and we're just going to sit here and I'm going to read my book. And then we're going to leave. Well, pretty soon, the dog's going to pull into the parking lot, be like, I like this parking lot. Then you're going to practice, okay, we're going to get out of the car and do ODR game until you can function, and then we're going to leave. And then once that's working, you can go with, okay, now we're going to go into the vet clinic and do ODR game. And then we're going to go into the vet clinic and I'm going to get the staff to come out and say hello. So you can keep working it till the dog's like, okay, I can walk into the vet clinic. Because honestly, I don't believe that most dogs care about being vaccinated. It just doesn't hurt that much. Too many dogs get vaccinated, it's fine. So once you build value, then you can build value from being vaccinated. Oh, whenever the vet pulls out that needle, I feed you bacon. Pretty soon the dog's like, okay. And vet clinics are great about this. They are more than willing to help, let you into an exam room because it's in their best interest for your dog not to freak out when he goes to the vet. I also want to talk about different types of stress. You can have a dog who's a positive stressor or a negative stressor. Positive stressors get hyper or activated. They are dogs more likely to be reactive when pushed in stressful situations. With Wicca, my 7-month-old puppy, when something stresses her out in the yard, and she's 7 months, so it could be a noise, it could be my husband's new archery target. She laps the yard. She laps, has a little dig, laps, has a little dig. That's a positive stress reaction. And it's perfectly fine. She laps the yard, then goes in, like when we introduced the new target, it's big, it's like 10 by 10. She'd lap the yard, go over and smell it. Lap the yard, get a little closer. Lap the yard, get a little closer. Lap the yard, and she jumped on the target and checked it all out. So that was her building up her confidence. I don't know, but it's relieving the stress caused by the new thing. But it's how she managed to get herself to the target, which is a lovely reaction, right? Because she still kept going. Her curiosity was stronger than her fear. If you have a dog that doesn't know how to calm itself down, then managing them to prevent them running around is also going to help them calm down. So that's the dog who starts to lap and can't stop. So he goes into that rut of, oh, I'm stressed, I just run, 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 run. You see it more, they tend to pace, they're moving all the time. Those are the dogs I want to take them by the collar and just stop them from moving. And the stopping them from moving, you'll see them start to calm down, to relax. Then you have the other side, negative stressors. They get still. Without a doubt, if your dog's going to stress, let's say at the vet, it's much easier to own a negative stressor than it is to own a positive stressor, because a negative stressor will freeze. So you can get in the vet, get the stuff done, and get out. Remember that little puppy who just froze for a minute? That would be an example of negative stress. If the dog stays frozen and can't overcome it, let's say you bring a rescue dog home and he's hiding in a corner and won't come out of the corner, I would block the corner. I would make a move because he is being rewarded by staying in that corner. So I'm going to start forcing motion, um, putting stuff in the corner, so that, let's say you take him out to the bathroom and he runs right away to the bedroom or the corner or whatever it is he's hiding in. I would make it so he can't. So now he has to find a new place to be comfortable. And that's fine because after 2, 3 days, I'm going to eliminate that place and force him to find a new place. And the more you do this, the more he's going to start being okay in the whole house. So you're just very calmly, very carefully, um, giving him, forcing him into new experiences. No pressure, no nothing, but he's learning to be comfortable in new places. Where if you allowed him to stay in that corner, he might never come out of it, depending on temperament. Okay, Christine, how are you? Sparky the pug pooped when he was stressed. Yes, I've had that happen on me. I've been pooped on. Yes, some dogs pee when they're stressed, and some dogs poop. Yes, and some dogs super stressed will blow their anal glands, which is a horrible smell. So what I'm saying is the world is full of stress, and for your dog, without a doubt, for some more than others, but even totally confident dogs once in a while get stressed. When you try and protect your dog from these stressors, you are in fact limiting your dog's ability to handle and overcome stress. Instead, to help your dog start teaching them how to handle stress by putting them in situations that stress them out a little and give them the opportunity to overcome the stress. Um, it's not so if you have a dog who's scared to do things, the dollar store is your best friend. Right now, we're coming into Halloween, so you go and buy a little scarecrow. You hang it on the door. Somewhere where your dog goes, maybe outside. So you hang it on your patio door. So he has to go buy this thing. Yeah, the first day he's going to be like, oh, I don't want to. But by day 4 or 5, he's probably going, whatever, I need to get outside. And now you change it to something else. So if you regularly change that, that's socializing, that's exposure, that's helping them overcome stress of something new. Okay, any last questions? I'm going to wrap this up. Um, thank you very much for listening. I hope you received information you can use and put to use helping your dog overcome some of his stresses. If you want me to help you create a custom plan to help your dog overcome the stressors, please do not hesitate to reach out and we can set up a consult. I will be back next week with another Facebook Live on Friday at 10 a.m. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy fall because it's come quickly from summer to fall in the blink of an eye. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next week. Thank you very much. Bye. Oh, good, Debbie. I'm glad it helps. Bye, guys.